Thanks for coming out on a Saturday. We will start our town hall, if you all could please stand. And we're going to do something they don't allow us to do in classrooms anymore. Hand over your heart, and ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much. And for some of you who may not know, I'm DeMaio, and I'm running for Congress in the 50th District here in San Diego County and Riverside. And this town hall is focused on a specific issue, which is the homeless crisis that we see happening throughout the entire state of California and in our own communities here in San Diego. But when we get to the question and answer period, please feel free to ask a question on any issue or topic that may be of interest to you. We do want to talk about the homeless issue, but we also want to answer any questions that you may have on a whole host of other issues. A little bit about myself. Those of you know, I hosted a radio show on AM 600 Kogo, and we basically considered the show the story behind the story, because you hear typically only one side of the story, particularly here in California. You hear what's coming from the left. You hear what's coming from the politicians and government and the liberal media. What I wanted to do was provide, the other side of the story, and no sugarcoating it. Really go into issues and explain, here's what's really driving this is what they're motivated by, and what their agenda is. And on the homeless issue, you're going to find that what we think the issue is not actually the root cause of the problem. And that the politicians actually have a very clear agenda here. And there is a lot of money to be made in continuing to have homeless individuals on the street. So the first part of this town hall, I'm going to talk about why do we have homelessness? What's the root cause? Because we cannot start talking about solutions until we really diagnose the problem. Why do we have so many people, more and more every single day, every week, on the streets in our communities? And then we'll start talking about my 4-point plan and how we're going to actually implement that first here in San Diego. We're not going to wait for statewide policy change, but we're going to implement it first here in San Diego, and then we're going to take it statewide. So let me start out with the homeless. This is both an issue of compassion as well as an issue of clean and safe neighborhoods. You have to look at both of the sides of the coin. We don't want these individuals to have to suffer out in the cold. We are so fortunate. We get to go home. We have a warm house. We have access to medical care. We have access to food. And so we all are generous and we're compassionate about wanting to help these people. However, helping them should not be seen as just simply coddling them or enabling them. That's not help. Helping them is, how do we help them deal with the issues, the underlying issues that cause them to not be in a situation where they could afford a home. Now, we also have a right, even though we're compassionate, and that's what's really driving us on homelessness, we have a right as taxpayers, as community members, as citizens, to live in clean and safe communities. We have a right to know that we won't be exposed to environmental and public health contaminants. We have a right to know that we will not be the victims of crime. We have a right to know that when we dial 911, that the police and the fire will be there in a timely manner versus them being tied up dealing with homeless individuals who are dialing 911 just because they want to go to the hospital because they're a little too cold. We have a right to receive the services, so that it's a both and issue here. It's clean and safe streets and helping the people on those on the streets get out of homelessness. Now, a lot of people say, all we have to do is get them jobs. Job training, get them jobs, and the homeless will be off the streets. We have 3.7% unemployment. Potted plants are getting jobs in this economy. So economic issues are only accounting for about 10% of the homeless population, economic issues. And that 10% are people who do fall down on their luck. And they are out of a house, out of an apartment. They don't have their home. They are called upper class homeless by the providers. The upper class homeless are people who have jobs. They've got cars. They've got gym memberships. They've got cell phones. And so they live in their cars, typically. They will shower at the gym. They go into work. And they are transitory. They do not stay on the streets typically more than a few weeks. They're on the street and they're off because they fell down on their economic luck and they just need to catch up. For example, a woman leaves her boyfriend because he's an abuser. She has nowhere else to go. She sleeps in her car. She still has a job. She gets enough money or finds a place pretty much in short order. The reason why I wanted to talk about those individuals is that the economically displaced individuals have access to the programs and typically get off the street relatively quickly. Now let's talk about 85 to 90% of the problem. These are individuals who do not have homes, comma, because of another issue. So when people say, well, we need to make housing more affordable, they wouldn't be able to afford a $500 a month apartment versus a $2,500 or $5,000 a month apartment. Housing costs are irrelevant. They wouldn't be able to even afford a $250 a month apartment. Why? Because they don't make $250. They don't make $500. They certainly don't make $2,500 because they don't have a job. Now they do have skills. Many of the homeless individuals have very marketable skills. They've had jobs in the past. They've held jobs. However, they no longer are able to keep a job because substance abuse, mental health, those are the two twin issues. So let's talk about substance abuse. Why can't you keep a job when you have a substance abuse problem, a drug problem, or you have an alcohol problem? Well, you can't keep a house because you're probably feeding your habit without any disposable income, and then you lose your job because you don't show up to work. Why don't you show up to work? Why are you chronically absent? Because you're strung up. Mental health. Also, absenteeism is an issue on the mental health side because they're depressed. They don't want to face the world. They stay they stay home. They miss work. But also, we are seeing borderline personality disorder, bipolar, and that leads to interpersonal conflict at work. That leads to problems with clients and customers, and so they lose their job because they have issues. And then there's this spiral called dual diagnosis. This is an individual who has both a mental health and a substance abuse problem. Dual diagnosis is very prevalent in the homeless population. And so you look at this, and when people say, well, all we have to do is do job training, or all we have to do under the current model is build them a homeless unit, a housing unit, under a policy that the politicians are calling housing first. That's the new flavor of failure. It's called housing first. And in that housing first model, what they say is, put all your money into building housing units, and then go up to a homeless person and say, you don't have to make any changes, here are the keys. Well, what does that do for the individual? Yes, it gives them a warm place to stay, and we want them to have a warm place to stay, but what we want to do is have them in a warm place to stay because we dealt with the underlying problem so that they then can be self-sufficient. That's the motivation. Housing first doesn't do that. What it says is, let's house the problem. You don't have to change your life. No, you can continue to carry on. In fact, the state of California will provide you with the hypodermic needles for you to shoot up. Can't have plastic straws, but we can have plastic hypodermic needles on the ground in our playgrounds. So we are literally funding failure. That's what the politicians are offering us with Housing First. Oh, and you know how much each of those units cost? The Government Accountability Office is out with a report. $400, $500, $600, even $930,000 per unit. Per unit. Well, I think we can get a couple granny flats for a lot cheaper. But more importantly than granny flats, the issue is not housing managed by government. Section 8 housing, housing authority projects. That's not what we need more of. What we need more of are programs that help break the cycle of dependency for these individuals and help them confront their demons. That's what we need more of. And it's far more cost efficient. Homelessness nationwide, you'll be surprised by this, down by 30%. Do you feel it here? No, it's up by as much as 300% since 2010 in the state of California. And, you know, we got our mayor here, who's part of the housing first failure paradigm, who says, oh, look, great, our homeless problem only went up by 3% last year. First, you're cooking the books on the count. Second, that's not something to celebrate. Because look at year after year after year after year, it's consistently skyrocketing, while other cities and counties and states across the country are seeing a dramatic drop. Why? Because the economy's hot. If your homeless population is going up by 3%, or 5%, or 15%, or 18% like in LA, in a good economy, yeah, it ain't the economy. There's something else happening here. What's happening in California? What did we do since 2010? First, we released people from the prisons. Prison realignment, Prop 57, early release of violent offenders. Now, when these individuals come out of prison, they don't have a job. They don't have a place to go. Second, Prop 47 took away the tools from law enforcement to compel homeless individuals into programs. In 2008, Mayor Giuliani came to California. This is when I was first elected to the city council, and I started researching homelessness because I knew that we were having a problem. I knew that the do-gooders were suing the city, saying you're not allowed to enforce your vagrancy or panhandling laws or your loitering laws or your encampment laws. Homelessness is a human right. No, it's not. It's a human tragedy. It's not a human right. But they were suing us. And I was saying, well, what do we do to deal with this? And Giuliani was giving a speech in Sacramento, and I accompanied him up to Sacramento. He was in his hotel room reviewing his speech with his glasses. I said, Mr. Mayor, you did a great job in New York cleaning up that city. You got the homeless off the streets. How did you deal with homelessness? He said, it's simple, Carl. I arrested them all. And he was only half joking. Here's how the model has worked, is that for every homeless individual on the street, think about this for you and me with family members. We probably all have our stories where you have someone who is on drugs or too much of the bottle or has bipolar or borderline personality disorder, and you're trying through the power of love to convince them, you gotta make the changes, you gotta go to counseling, you gotta do the recovery program, you gotta take the meds. It takes 6 weeks to 8 weeks, if you're lucky, for the mental health meds to kick in. And usually the psychiatrist will say you have to titrate, you have to try different ones. One doesn't work, one makes it worse, one kind of makes you groggy. We finally found the right match. That could be a 5, 6, 7 month process to get someone so their chemicals are back up. So the power of love was not able to convince these individuals on our streets to make the changes. When the power of love fails, the stick of law enforcement is the only resort. And the do-gooders on the left say, no, don't use law enforcement. Look, we don't want to use law enforcement. We'd rather use love, but love failed on this one. So we use the stick of law enforcement to say, you can't be using drugs. You can't have burglarized that store. You can't lash out and physically assault people. You can't threaten people. So we're arresting you. We're going before the judge, and the judges and law enforcement and social service providers in New York under the Giuliani model partnered. They partnered with the drug courts, they partnered with the Superior Court, and the judges would say, good news and bad news. The bad news is, we find you guilty and I'm sentencing you to prison. The good news is, I will suspend the sentence, release you into a treatment program, but if you mess up one time, you're going back into the you-know-what. And so, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But if you break the law, we'll get you into a prison or a center where you will not be hurting other people on the streets, yourself included. But here's your chance to break that cycle, and it's no nonsense. Now you might say, Carl, that's not going to work. They're going to eventually end up falling off the wagon. They're going to end up in prisons. So why don't we just go ahead and put them in prison? I say absolutely not, because we know that things are working. Where are they working? 2 blocks down, Solutions for Change. It is a homeless service provider that receives not a penny of government money. Do you know why it doesn't receive a penny of government money? Because they refuse to follow the failed housing first model of give them a unit, very expensive unit, and expect no changes in their life in exchange. Solutions for Change says, we'll give you a unit, but clean and sober. You can't even use cigarettes. You can't even smoke. I don't know why, but apparently that's their model, and it works. Their success rate in breaking the cycle and getting people into independent living is astounding. Here's another program, East County Transitional Living Center. Down on the 8 freeway, there's an old motel. I think it's called the Super 7 or something. And so a group of philanthropists put some money together. They bought the old motel, and they converted it into a homeless housing facility with a church next door providing the training programs and daycare for the kids and GED classes. And you can go there, and they'll give you a tour. They have units just for men. And they bunk 7 to a hotel room, a motel room. It's tight quarters, but hey, it's better than sleeping on the streets. They have units just for women, and then they have family units. Sometimes it's one family, sometimes it's 2 families, but it's close quarters. But the goal is not to have them there very long. The goal is to provide them with the housing that they need while they make the life changes. Here's the other thing that East County Transitional Living Center does. They don't take any money from government. They are funded, 86% of their funds come from the homeless individuals. But homeless individuals have no money. Oh, they have a work program. They require that their homeless individuals work. They are hired out to various companies, and I'm so grateful that there are companies that say, sure, we'll hire those people to do the work. They get paid $15 an hour. $5, a third of their earnings, go into a savings account to save up money so they can get their own apartment when they're ready. $5 they get to spend, a little bit of spending money. $5 goes back to East County Transitional Living Center and funds 86% of program costs, the other 14% charitable contributions. Not a dime of government money. They also have a 87% success rate at the 6-month mark, 180 days. 86% of their recipients who graduate from their program are no longer homeless 6 months later. Why do I say you have to measure it 6 months from now? Because you could say, oh, this person's not homeless anymore, 30 days. But if you stay clean and sober for 6 months, you're on your way. You could fall, but looking at the changes in life over a period of time, that's East County Transitional Living Center. No money from government. I ask, what more could we do? How many more lives could we save and change if we opened up Solutions for Change and East County Transitional Living Center to receive government funding to expand their programs? I think we could save thousands and thousands and thousands more lives rather than wasting our money, throwing good money after bad with the government cozy industry. We're going to talk about them in a minute. Why failure continues to be a very profitable endeavor for some of those groups. Now, why don't they get the money? 2 reasons. 1, they require that you actually stay clean and sober and follow the rules. But 2, they mention God. They mention God. You know what? First Amendment is freedom of religion. It's not freedom from religion. If you use yoga to get people out of the homeless condition, great. If jazzercise, wonderful. But if you use God, apparently in the government's eyes, that's bad. I say whatever works, fund it. I don't care about how you got the person past their problem. I care that you help the person conquer the demon. And so I wanted to tell you this because most people say, well, how do we know that your plan's going to work? Don't trust me on this. Look at the actual programs that I want us to expand. Doesn't mean that those 2 programs, Solutions for Change and East County Transitional Living Center, are the end-all be-all for everybody. I think we need a multitude of pathways, a multitude of programs to help folks. But right now, we're not holding programs accountable for results. We're just funding the Housing First model. So here's the 4-point plan. Number 1, in order for us to deal with the issue of homelessness, and this is going to be on a ballot in November for you to vote on. And I want to have this fight because it's time that people actually know why we have homeless people in the community. And this ballot measure is going to force the issue right on the top of the page. Right now, on March 3rd, there's a tax increase that we're fighting that's quote-unquote for homeless. The polling shows we're defeating it. So I'm still making sure that we get a no vote on Measure C, because throwing good money after bad is not good. But we also want to say, vote no on C, but you're going to be able to vote yes on something good in November. And that requires, number one, in the county of San Diego, no housing first monies shall be allocated until we restore the right of police and law enforcement to enforce the law, period. Any money for housing first will be sequestered into an escrow account. The money will still be there. It's like a carrot dangling in front of the politicians. You want the money? Let us enforce the law. Support police and fire and law enforcement to actually say, you can't be camped out here. No loitering, no vagrancy, no panhandling, no public encampments. Enforce the law. Why? Because we must have law enforcement if we are going to get them into the programs. That's the second part. I want us to increase substantially our investment in mental health and substance abuse programs. Now, some of you might say, well, we don't have the money and the expansion, how are we going to pay for it? I will tell you this, it will pay for itself. In fact, we will make money on this program. Because every time we build that housing unit, $900,000, $400,000, $500,000, that's a lot of money, okay? Every time we have a homeless problem, we're going to have more people say, don't go to San Diego for tourism. So you lose revenues on the tourism in the economy. Every time we have a homeless problem, they dial 911. And whether it's a law enforcement issue or a public health issue, we're paying for the emergency room costs. We're paying for the police and fire and ambulance to go out there. And the public safety officers actually have nicknames for these individuals. They call them frequent flyers because they do the 911 multiple times a week, particularly in the winter months. Lots of frequent flyers in the winter months. And so I actually believe that if you do increase the mental health and substance abuse programs, you're going to make more money or save more money. That has to be done because we can't just say, well, we're going to enforce the law. But, okay, so you're going to arrest them, but are you going to actually help them? Yes, we can do that too. We also need to have the shelter capacity, just like East County Transitional Living Center and Solutions for Change. We need some beds because if you're going to say you got to go clean and sober, you have to go through the program. It doesn't happen overnight. It takes several months, maybe 9 months for some of these challenges. And so we need to have a warm place for them to sleep off the streets during that period of time. And I think that needs to be part of this. It doesn't mean that they get their own housing first unit, their own apartment. They may be in cramped quarters, and that's fine because that's part of the program. You're not here permanently. We want to get you through the program. Third, open up this funding model to all service providers based on a performance-based contract, where we will say we want you to bid per person. Okay, how much would you charge us if you were going to treat a person that we refer to your program? And we will give you 30% of your bid price for the upfront intake, case management, and programs. We will give you an additional 30% once they're placed in a job in a housing unit on their own accord. But you're not going to get the remaining 40% until 6 months later when they're still paying their own rent and being self-sufficient and keeping their job. So what we want is longevity on the solution. And I want to stop funding failure. If a program consistently fails, A, they're going to go out of business because you only get 30% of your bid price for effort. Okay? And B, the ones that are succeeding are going to end up getting more and more of the referrals from the social service agents. So we have to make sure we do performance-based contracting and hold them accountable. Here's the fourth. The fourth thing is so important. Mandatory work requirements for all homeless individuals in the program. And if that means you hire them out and they have spending money, fine. But we may also put them into a public work crew, cleaning up the freeway, cleaning up the beaches and bays. We're going to have the most pristine community, okay? San Francisco has fecal matter on their streets. We're going to have the homeless people scrubbing the sidewalks, cleaning up the beaches and bays. 2 reasons. Number one, we're investing all this money into the programs, and so we want to have a return on investment. But second, that East County Transitional Living Center model. It gives them some money. It puts some money into a bank account for them to be self-sufficient. There's pride in knowing I did my work shift today. I'm not a drain on society. I'm learning to keep a job and do the shift, and day after day I get up and I'm productive. That's priceless in terms of the intervention that we're trying to achieve. And so those are the 4 points. Number 1, enforce the law. Number 2, expand dramatically the substance abuse, mental health, and shelter capacity. Third, make the money available based on performance, which includes our faith-based programs. And fourth, a mandatory work requirement. Now, people are going to say, well, Carl, it may not work. How do you like the results that the politicians are giving us? Kindly step aside and give us just 1 year of this approach. Give us 1 year. That's all I'm asking for. Now, we're going to put it on the ballot. The reason why that the expanded capacity was linked to law enforcement is that I support the lawsuit that was filed by Ted Olson. Ted Olson is actually a contributor of mine to my campaign. He is a phenomenal attorney. And he filed a lawsuit trying to challenge the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals decision from 5 or 6 years ago that said you can't enforce the law against homeless people. Now, this has never been adjudicated to the Supreme Court. And so we need to basically reverse the Ninth Circuit. But secondly, we've read the Ninth Circuit's appeal decision. And what it says is you can't enforce the law if the politicians won't tell us that. They say, well, you can't enforce the law. No, it doesn't say that. Okay? Even that liberal judge said you can't enforce the law unless. And we looked at what they said unless was. Unless there's a cot available. That's all it requires. We have to have a cot, a warm place for them to go. And that's not too much to ask. And so what I say is, make that capacity available, treatment program. You get to choose the cot with treatment or the jail based on the crime that you just committed. You get to choose. Here's what will happen. We're going to save lives. We're going to clean up streets. And those that don't want their lives to be changed, well, they can go to LA and San Francisco where they coddle. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. That crap is tolerated up in LA and San Francisco. Let them live in the squalor. But in San Diego, in Riverside, in Orange County, we're cleaning up the mess. Plain and simple. Plain and simple. But Carl, compassion. Now, your form of compassion, I think, is actually hateful. Because you're willing to coddle people and not help them break the cycle. You may not feel hate in your heart, but you are lousy at your compassion in terms of the negative impact that it's having on people. You are an enabler. You are an enabler. You are allowing this tragedy to continue to drag on. There's another reason why I want to start in San Diego. Actually, 2 reasons. Number 1, I know that we can communicate to the voters in San Diego and their common sense and we'll get it passed in November. But secondly, I want to be able to have a model in San Diego where we actually fix the problem and we look at the people in LA and say, hi, you want this? Yeah. Let's do this statewide now. So by 2022, we do a statewide California initiative and say, we've got the model. It's provable. Only in 18 months' time, look at the numbers, dramatic drop. Look at all these people who have testimonials about how it changed their lives, etc. So that's the 4-point plan on homelessness. And I believe that it really does narrow the focus down to the driving problems. Now, why are the politicians wanting just a tax increase and the housing first? Let me be very blunt about it. They are using homeless people as window dressing to get more of our money. All right? They use our kids, they use our potholes, they use the congested traffic, and how dumb are we? I don't think we're dumb at all. We know what they're doing. They're liars, cheats, and thieves. They say we're going to take care of the kids. No, class sizes are still overcrowded. We're going to fill the potholes. Gas tax, yeah. And now, we'll take care of the homeless. No, you're not going to. Where's that money going? Housing first. Build the government housing with a government contractor that's union only. No non-union firm can even step foot, whether it's a pipe fitter, an electrician, a construction guy. You can't do that. No. It's the union. What do we require of all the union members? They pay dues into the political fund. And the politicians get them. Oh, I think we found the reason why. We found the reason why. That's why the $900,000 units are there. There's a lot of campaign cash going through that system. And the quote, developers are writing big developer checks personally and through their corporations because they get the government contract to do the government housing programs. They're backing these individuals. We're talking Todd Gloria. We're talking Tony Atkins. They get big checks from these groups. And Tony Atkins' wife is you ready for this? Swampy. She's one of the housing developers. Yes, 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 millions and millions and millions of dollars. Yes. And so you look at this, and it doesn't take much to just take the string on this sweater and start pulling. And you're like, you guys don't want to help these people. This is a giant, big scam. The Housing First thing is a scam. So the ballot measure is important for us. When I go to Washington, I'm introducing a bill, and there is support for a lot of members of Congress and are starting to see that this is a problem. Ben Carson, the president's HUD and Urban Development Secretary, understands that this is a problem. And so I want to introduce an amendment to the HUD appropriation bill that says you can spend money, provided that no state or locality restrict the funding allocated to organizations based on rules for sobriety or mental health adherence, or based on the fact that they may have religious components to the programs that they're using. That if you want the money, state or locality, you can't have the strings attached to it. And so I'm looking at both federal legislation to help implement this plan, but also this ballot measure. We'll open it up to questions and comments, but let me just say this. I got a lot of 5-point, 10-point, 3-point plans on my website. And I got mocked by one of my opponents. He said on TV, well, if you're looking for the guy with all the plans, that's not me, that's the other fellow. You know what? That's part of the problem. Okay?
Yes.
It's part of the problem. You know, you had the Republicans go to Washington and say, repeal and replace Obamacare. Okay, great. You're right. More government has screwed up the healthcare system. Get Obamacare and let's roll it back. And then they didn't do it. At first they said, oh, well, you gave us the House, but you didn't give us the Senate. So we gave them the Senate. And then they said, oh, you gave us the House and the Senate, but you didn't give us the White House. So we gave them all three of the things. And then what happened? No. Then we found out that plan that was in the drawer, the replace plan, didn't really exist. So I think 4-point, 5-point, 10-point plans, like that was a 0-point plan. I want specifics. Here's the other reason why I want specific plans. I want you to be able to hold me accountable. When I say I'm going to do something, I want to not just give you niceties about it. I want you to know, hey, you said you were going to amend this law, you were going to enact this change, and you were going to impose this policy. You've done none of it. I want specificity, not vacuous statements, but specific, accountable commitments. And that's why I think we need to get people to sign on the dotted line and be specific. I love the contract with America in 1994 because it was 10 specific things. You knew whether or not, yes or no, it was done. I loved the president when he said, let's build a wall. Because you know whether or not it got done. All right? It's a specific thing. Whether you agree or disagree with it, and you're going to put it on the website. You're going to make the commitment. And secondly, you have a policy plan, but that's policy. It's a vision. It's a commitment. But are you going to take action? And that's why the ballot measure is so important. We'll file the ballot measure. We'll collect the signatures. We'll wage the campaign. Just like with the gas tax, with the recall of Josh Newman. We'll file the recall, we'll collect the signatures, and we did throw that guy out of office. And even on the gas tax, we filed it, we collected the signatures, we got it on the ballot, we were winning. They did a poll showing we were winning 67-20, and they had to change the title to steal the election. And I'm not going to be deterred. We got another gas tax repeal coming up. I mean, it's like, you knock us down, we're just going to be like one of those little things that comes popping right back up. Action is everything. So those are the two things that I think you're going to find with me is a little different than some of the others. Policy plans that are specific, and then, okay, so here's the plan. How are we going to execute it? It's about trench warfare. I'm going to be asking for your help on the signatures, on the campaign here locally when we get this thing on the ballot. So with that, questions, comments, suggestions, it can be on any topic, including homelessness. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so can you address your suggestion or your ideal or your vision for when a person has graduated out of a program as you described, as East County has? okay, so they're working and they've established themselves and they know, hey, I can work, and where do they go next because of the cost of housing? I'd like to know how you, what you've considered about that.
The cost of housing in San Diego is not the homeless challenge. It's an everyone challenge. The cost of housing is everyone. Our cost of living is too high. And the cost of housing is driven mainly by two challenges. Number one, the mandates, the regulations, the toxic environment that we've created with government policies. And number two, us. A lot of us are anti-growth, aren't we? Oh yeah, a lot of people anti-growth. Well, we say, well, no, we need more housing. We're short on housing. And when they say, okay, great, we're going to build it here. Oh no, not there. No, over there is where the housing should be built. Here's my assessment of that. It's a natural inclination of like, I don't want anything to change in my environment. I'm kind of used to it. But then once a project is done, and if it's done well, if we hold them accountable, then people are like, oh, I loved it. I was supported all along. I'm so glad we have this amenity. So first thing is it's a natural default to say no to change. But secondly, there's a real understandable reason why we say no. The politicians aren't giving us the energy, the water, or the traffic capacity to sustain it. And I think that is the major issue that drives a lot of common sense San Diegans and Californians to say, no more housing, even though we all know we need more housing over there. If you build it, we need to have the amenities and the infrastructure to sustain it. That is the thing that I think we need to come forward with. And so, yes, I want to talk about cutting the red tape and making it easier to build a house, because you saw the study that they did about 6 months ago. They took the architectural plans for a house, and then they submitted them in Texas and in California. The Texas project was $250,000. The California project was $560,000. Okay, so big difference, right? And that doesn't include land costs. That's just government mandates, regulations, the process, etc. But I think what we are seeing here is that a lot of us are concerned about projects specifically because we look at specific roads and say, how is this road going to handle it? How is the freeway? How is the 15 going to handle it? And that's because the politicians have stolen the money. We have built for expansion. They said the 15 freeway would be expanded all the way up to Riverside. They just canceled that. Sandag canceled it. They said the 78 would be expanded. They're canceling that. The 67, the 52, the 56, all that was supposed to be expanded. We voted for a special tax. They actually said, here are the roads. We promised, pinky swear. They lied, and now they're trying to steal the money. So in order for us to have those projects approved, in order for the citizens to say, we can handle it as long as the roads go in, we got to do the roads first. We got to do the water. We got to do the energy. And so if we can address those three things, I think people in the community will be more positively inclined to look at a project and say, with these changes, with this accountability, I'm willing to agree to it. People are reasonable. We've got to start addressing the issue of housing. But those individuals, when they come out of the program, there are a lot of housing units that are available for those individuals. It may not be the largest apartment. It may be having 3 or 4 roommates. But the notion that I cannot do anything but sleep on the grate? No. There are options. And you know what? I heard that the price of an apartment in Dubuque, Iowa is very cheap. Doesn't mean that you have to be in California. Again, what we want to do is help them kick the habit, help them address the mental health issues so that they can make the life choices that can be sustained. Yes?
So I'd like your comment on 2 points. There have been some studies and investigations into the insurance companies, and for lack of a better word, the scheme of having people get treatment in California coming from out of state. So, to what extent do you think your plan would address that problem of out-state migration of homeless? And then secondly, your comment on accessory dwelling units and whether that is going to continue to enable this problem or if that's actually...
You mean the granny flats?
Yes.
No, I don't think the granny flats are causing the homeless problem. I think what's causing the homeless problem is that the word on the street, literally on the street across the country, is if you want to get easy access to drugs, if you want to basically live fun and fancy free with no law enforcement risk, go to California. And I want to change that reputation. First, we change it by saying, if you want to do all that, go to San Francisco. Go to Los Angeles. But not here in San Diego, not in Southern California. So I think that the reputation issue is the issue that we have to deal with. And that's why you've had this skyrocketing increase of individuals that are homeless, that are coming from other places in the country. I love it when someone says, oh, it's because we have warm weather. It just got warm out here? Don't get me started. Yes?
Coming from experience and what all your programs, I totally believe in. I think they would work. I was homeless. We finally got our place in 2016. We were homeless for 4 years, 2 years before that. We did all the programs. I wish we had solutions for change. I really did, because then it would have gotten us off the streets. But with the police arresting you, because we got a ticket 1 week before we got our place. We had it 3 months. Thankfully, we had somebody working with us that we put our money in. But we got a ticket 1 week before we got our space for policing public encampment. With the police arresting us, we would have not been there. With the safe parking anywhere here in Vista, we would have been okay until we got our place. Is there any plan for safe parking for that 1%, 10% before they get in Solutions for Change or East County or any of that for the non that's in between for the?
I think part of my plan is to make sure we have the available beds or warm place for everyone to sleep, okay? We can do that as a community. What I don't think we should be doing is the $900,000 custom apartment built by a government housing developer, subsidized and sustained with tax dollars with no commitment by the occupant to actually make life changes. So I want you to know that we do have a commitment to make sure that we have the warm place for people to stay, provided that they are accountable in making those changes. And if you did get a ticket, again, I believe in this. I do believe that with this approach, with the outcome-oriented approach, you would have a judge, that you would have a prosecutor, that you would have someone in law enforcement saying, oh, a ticket, we have a good place for them to go. She's already got a unit. She's self-sufficient. She's got a job. The goal is to make sure that we can help people into self-sufficiency, and we have people with big hearts in the system. So I trust in that compassion, but we have to hold the system accountable to get the results. Yes, sir.
You are openly gay, and your husband is a very prominent member of the LGBTQ community, correct? I was just.
Do I know what my favorite television show is and what my favorite food is?
Now, my question pertains to the LGBTQ issues with homelessness as well. And there's no denying that there is a very bad endemic with the gay population and crystal meth, and there's that side of it. But as soon as you introduce a religious aspect to some of these programs, a lot of these people that are on the streets because of the rejection of their families is because of the religious aspect. So how are you going to provide a safe space for the LGBTQ community in addition to making sure that they're getting treatment so that they don't end up rejected from these facilities too?
Yeah. I know that there's a certain political, thought out there that says that we have to customize programs for every adjective out there. How do we just say it's a workable program? Not an LGBT program, not a Latino program, not an Asian program. It's a working program. That's what I'm trying to get to. It is a working program. That's what I do. All these folks out there want to divide us with labels and buckets. You're in this bucket, you're in that bucket. And guess what? That bucket over there, they victimized you with. You know what? This bucket over here, they victimized you. And the only way you can stop yourself from being victimized is to give all your freedom to me. Oh, I see what you're doing. I reject your question. I reject the way you frame your question. I find it offensive. I think that's what's helping create division in this country. Now, I want to amend your question with your permission. And that is, how do we make sure that programs are available to meet the needs of the wide diversity of people that are out there? And so let me answer that question with your permission. And that is, as I said earlier, if yoga works to get you off of homelessness, by all means, we'll fund yoga. If jazzercise works, we will fund jazzercise. And if there's something with religion, by all means, they should have a right to do that. But right now, we're only saying jazzercise and yoga get the government money, but not a religious program. I'm not worried about the diversity of programs being available, because when we hold people accountable for results, you're going to have a whole bunch of different programs. People are going to be brought in, and they're going to, you might have a church basically saying, well, we have a religious program, but we also have a secular program. Why? Because, We'd like to encourage you to come through the religious program, but we also are compassionate. We want to help you change your life. So if you want the secular program, we got one of those too. Give it some faith. Because right now we're funding failure. And that's what I'm trying to stop. Next question. Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
I wanted to mention in the AA program,
Yes.
religion can be anything. There's a fellow that's been sober 22 years and carries a football around.
Yeah.
But.
Wait, does he worship the NFL?
And what I mean is that religion is different to different people. I respect people's religion. I may not believe the same
Right.
way they do. And AA,
Sure.
that's what tell people, give it to a higher being, and, yeah, and it's worked.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be some kind of strict religion.
Again, whatever works, I'm more interested in the end result, compensating them for the end result, and you just cut to the chase, all right? There are other groups out there that want to divide us by buckets, and I reject that. I think most common sense Californians are going to reject that. Other questions and comments? Yes, ma'am.
I just want to thank you for just saying what you plan to do with all your plans. I'm so tired of hearing not what the person wants to do, but how awful the other person is.
Yeah. Believe me, I agree. You know, we have a contrast add up. Here's why. Because literally I have one of my opponents lying to voters. And when a politician lies, when I was on radio, it was the first time I said, you know what? This is what they're saying is happening, but let me tell you what the truth is. Boom, 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 boom. Because you get these statements that are out there. And so the ad that I have up, I said, if we're going to do a contrast ad, at least make it kind of cute, kind of funny. And so it's a carnival thing. And he's got the snake oil, Isa. He's got a snake oil stand. And the snake oil stand talks about the 3 lies, con jobs that he's trying to pull. Number 1, he says that he's going to build a wall. Oh, that's a new one. You opposed the president's border wall and called it unnecessary. He says that he's against amnesty. He authored the only Republican amnesty law covering 11 million illegal immigrants. He voted for amnesty not once, not twice, but 3 times. Oh, and finally, he says he's the best buds of the president. This is the only Republican. And believe me, you got Mitt Romney, you had John McCain, you had a couple of the others in the House. Out of all of them, none of them did what Darrell Issa did, which is call for a special prosecutor to investigate the president. And so when a politician looks at you and boldly lies, I think it's important that people say, penalty, yellow card, red card, here's the facts, so that you can cast an informed ballot. It's like if I would stay silent, well, Gavin Newsom says, the gas tax is going to go to the roads. And I was like, well, he has a right to say that. He's saying the positive thing. No, you're a liar, a cheat, and a thief, and this is what you've done with our existing gas tax, and this is what you're going to continue to do with our gas tax. Yes, sir, go ahead.
This is more of a comment. You talked about the motel out in East County that has as many as 7 people in a room, and how that upsets some people on the left because, God forbid, everybody shouldn't have their own
Doesn't
space.
upset anyone that's in that motel, by the way. They're grateful to be there. They are thrilled.
I have a daughter who's in the United States Navy, volunteered like everybody who's in the military now. She's out on a deployment right now. And she lives on the ship in a berthing area with 40 women.
40 women in a birthing area.
Triple bunk. And you know what? They don't complain.
Thank you. You know what? That's a great analogy. That is a good point to be making.
To serve the country and to be triple bunk, that's what it takes.
Yes, sir. Excellent point. I'm going to use that. Yes, ma'am. Can you stand up so everyone may hear?
I have a comment to the gentleman that brought up the LGBT community. It was the behavior that gets these people on the streets. It is not the particular bucket they want to identify with. We need to address the behavior.
Right.
The basic issue. And my question is, what's going on with Jewish family services? Something's up. Are they in the government's pocket? Because it certainly looks like it.
There's a lot of groups out there that have great names and some good programs as well. But the only way that we're going to get those programs to really channel their resources and our tax dollars to the programs that work is to have these accountability mechanisms. So again, I don't want to point out specific programs that I think are problematic. What I want to do is change the system so that the programs that want to make a difference are really incentivized to make a difference. And I think Jewish Family Services can be part of that network of providers, but we have to hold everyone accountable for those results. Yes, sir.
One of the infrastructure growths you mentioned is energy. What source do you support?
Okay, energy. Can I talk about water and energy at the same time? So water and energy. Apparently, California has never experienced drought and rain cycles before. First time. We actually have enough water in California. We always have. But in the 1990s, we changed water law because the environmentalists started suing and the legislature started kowtowing. And so we changed water law. And what we said is, we're not going to let the water flow to the populations that need it. What we're going to do is we're going to restrict water, and we're going to let it flow out to the ocean, dump it in the ocean. We're not going to build reservoir space because, quoting Jerry Brown, because you shouldn't have a green lawn. And you're sitting there saying, I shouldn't have a green lawn. Sort of like I shouldn't have a plastic bag, I shouldn't have a plastic straw. And now it's, not only should you not have a green lawn, you shouldn't use more than 50 gallons of water a day. And you're sitting back saying, well, what if we have an abundance of water? Did you know that in San Diego County, even during the drought, we had a surplus of water every single month? Did you know that? We actually started pushing it into our reservoir, and then we had to start letting it flush out of the city. As the rest of the state had a drought, we had a surplus of water. And then we told people mandatory restrictions, even though we had a surplus of water. Why? Because, we can't have you not have restrictions and have others that do. Says who? This sounds like a political agenda to me, and it is. Here's the great thing that's happening. Because we are becoming far better at building housing units, a house built today uses 10% of the water of a house built in 1955. So I loved it when I was on city council and people would come up and say, we can't do this. We have to not approve this project because we don't have water. I'd say, what year was your home built in? 1955. Just so you know, one of these units, or 10 of these units, equal one of your homes. So if you're worried about water and water efficiency, start looking internally. But even that, I'm not demanding water efficiency mandates, because I want to know that the water supply is dealt with, not necessarily just the demand, it's the water supply. So we can celebrate innovation and technology because we are more water efficient. We are far more energy efficient. And that's something that the market has created. But we're now choking artificially the supply of both energy and water. Why do we not have enough energy? Because the government came in and said, we don't want cheap energy. We want exotic energy. We want luxury designed energy. In other words, what they're saying is, not all electricity volts are the same. What we want are these sources of energy, not these sources. And then we have all these mandates that have been applied. Clean natural gas apparently is bad now. Can't have clean natural gas. Instead, we got to whack the birds with the wind. What I say is, all of the above. I don't care where you get your energy. I got solar. I think wind is great. I think geothermal is wonderful, and hydro is great, and all of the above. My view is make sure that people are not priced out of their home because of their energy bill. How many of you have an energy bill that's $500 or more per month? Can you sustain $500 or more per month? What would you have to do?
Move.
Here's my prediction. You will have an energy bill of $500 or more in the next 2 years. How do I know? Because they're putting in something, not only time of use restrictions, but they're now issuing energy fines. If you use more than they think you should have used for the month, you will receive an energy fine. And it's happening all over. And August was when your bill will get the closest to the 500. because many of those watts that you're using are coming along with a fine because you've used too much energy. Now you might say, well, I'm paying for the energy. I'm paying more, it's a higher tier, but you're fining me on top of that? Same thing with water. Starting in 2 years, you're gonna get water fines, 55 gallons or more per individual. Your bill will have a water fine from the water cops who say, you've used too much, so now you have to pay this. And water and energy in California is the most expensive than any other state in the country. And yet, we have an abundant supply of both. So we've got to deal with the government failure on those two issues so that we can drive down the price and actually increase the capacity, increase the supply that flows based on demand. This is something that I think at the federal level we have to start addressing, because water is not just a state issue, a local issue, it's a federal, state, and local issue. And Feinstein and Boxer and Feinstein and Harris, although Harris doesn't even show up to work, they're not addressing that big issue as it relates to the federal government's role in water and energy supply. One last question, yes, and then I'll stay.
Not a question, I'll let somebody else ask another question.
Okay.
But a comment on that. We've been trying to conserve water and energy, and we're down to the lowest amount
Ever.
of water that
Yeah.
we use. But that's only, I think our water itself was $3.50.
Has your water bill gone down?
No, it's not.
No.
It's a fixed price.
Yeah.
And that's what keeps, and they just sent us a notice, those fixed prices are going up again.
Yes, they are.
So,
Overtime, staff bonuses, salaries, pensions,
Yep.
no competition, no outsourcing, all of that stuff in the water utility departments of government. The government department to manage the energy. How's the DMV doing for us? How's the water department doing? I mean, this is absurd what's going on here. But again, it gets back to that issue of affordable housing, because it's the price of a house is also the watering and it's the energy. It's all in. The cost of living in California is unbearable. One last question. Yes, sir.
I just want to thank you. You are bringing the truth, and you are the one candidate that I know of that speaks to solutions instead of simply hiding the symptoms.
Thank you. Thank you very
And
much.
that this man will go to Washington and bring solutions to bear on the problems, not just simply cover up symptoms which allow them to continue to put money into the pockets of people that they choose to do so.
Thank you very much.
Carl, I just want to thank you.
So there are 3 requests I have of you, because I will stay one-on-one and answer as many questions as you'd like. Number 1, I cannot win this seat alone, and I've never done anything by myself. This is a movement. I'm willing to do my part, and I've never asked anyone to do something I'm not willing to do myself. And you all have probably seen the TV footage or even seen me in front of stores collecting signatures on the petitions. That sort of activism, that movement is desperately needed in California. I am fearful that we are losing great Californians to other states because they're fleeing. They've given up hope. And I say, no, stay and fight. Stay and fight. Do not flee this state. We can do this. Just because we've had feckless, ineffective leadership by the Republicans in the state, I'm going to kick the tires on both parties. The Democrats are wrong on policy, and I disagree with their approach, and they're leading us to socialism. But the Republicans are putting up a fight and offering an alternative. So both of you, pox on both your houses. And so what we need to do as citizens is say, we can't trust either one of these. Let's create our own citizens' revolt, and let's really start lighting a fire in California. So I need you to see your role as crucially important. And so what do we need to do? First, if you can contribute, please do so. I'm getting hammered in the mailbox, hammered on TV. We need to try to keep pace with getting our message out. If you don't want to contribute, we can sell you a t-shirt. We can sell you freedom straws. So we got our little store back there. Yes, they say freedom on the side of them. They're reusable straws that you can use. Tell a friend. There's a couple ways you can tell a friend. That's the second thing, is tell a friend. Take a lawn sign. Proudly display it. You're telling all your neighbors. Email your friends and text them on your phone or call them. you would be amazed. Word of mouth marketing is so priceless. You've got a movie that comes out, and you probably go see it when a friend says, "Oh, you gotta see it, it's so funny. It's an amazing movie, you're gonna love it." Or you buy a book because you got referred to the book by a friend. Your referral is so important to me. So if you go home, go on your email, send it to your address book, send it out to friends, say, check out Carl. He's got plans, he's got energy. Here's his website, carlmile.com. And then third and finally, I need you to come back with a friend. We've got an event coming up in Escondido. We have actually an event every other day throughout the district. I'll go to the opening of an envelope. Anyone, is there, I will be there. But what I want you to do is come back to one of our future events by bringing a couple of friends. One of the things that we're trying to do is get ballot harvesting done legally in California. And so we have a program called Barbecue, Beer, and Ballots. And what obviously you get barbecue and beer, who can turn that down, it's fun. But secondly, you bring your ballot and we'll give you a voter guide. And what you can say is, you know how complicated the ballot is? You spend an hour the night before trying to research, what does this mean, and is this a tax increase? No. Come to the Barbecue, Beer, and Ballots event here, and an election expert, Carl DeMaio, will answer all your questions. And there's a voter guide, and guess what? The voter guide is up online at SanDiegoElectionGuide.org. But don't tell them it's there, because we want them to come with their ballot and fill it out. You can either drop it in the metal box that goes to the registrar of voters office that evening, or we'll give you a free stamp. As long as you're encouraged to get that ballot mailed in and returned. That's so important. So